All right, today we're jumping into a fascinating field called neurotheology. It's this incredible space where brain science and spiritual practice actually meet. We're going to look at how these ancient traditions and really modern technology are starting to come together to heal the mind.
But that begs a pretty big question, doesn't it? How do you actually train someone to heal a mind? Well, to get at an answer, we're going to follow a trainee through a real-world program that's built to do just that. It uses cutting-edge tools alongside some really ancient traditions to help people who are struggling with, everything from trauma to depression.
So this is basically the roadmap for a neurofeedback practitioner in training. Now, we're going to zoom in on two really critical weeks. First, week 12, the practicum. That's all about learning how to track a client's progress. And then week 13, the research review, which is where they have to dive deep into the science behind it all.
Okay, so first up, our trainee steps into the practicum. And let me tell you, this is not just about learning how to use a bunch of fancy equipment. It's really about developing a whole new mindset for healing, one that's grounded in solid evidence and genuine care.
Yeah, right from the get-go, the program's whole philosophy is crystal clear. The goal here isn't to create these true believers who go around making wild, exaggerated promises. No, it's to shape careful, critical thinkers who really get the limits of the technology and, most importantly, always put their client first. Humility, you could say, is the real foundation.
So now we're in week 12, and this is where the training gets really real. Our student is moving from just theory into actual practice, and they're focusing on one of the most crucial skills in any kind of therapy, learning to read the signs of progress.
It sounds so simple, but this one question, this is everything. You could have the most advanced technology in the entire world, but if you can't accurately measure whether or not it's actually helping, you're basically flying blind. This is the very heart of what they call measurement-based care.
And this report right here, this shows you what measurement-based care actually looks like. Instead of just vaguely asking, "So how are you feeling?" our trainee learns to track really specific areas, like anxiety and stress load. And by comparing the current severity to where it was before, they can see these clear, objective trends. Like you can see here, the documented improvement in stress and mood.
And where does this data come from? Well, it comes from standardized clinical tools. The trainee has to learn exactly which screener to use for which specific concern. So for example, for anxiety, they might use something called the GAD-7, which is a 7-question survey to measure anxiety severity. Each of these tools provides a reliable signal that helps them make smart, informed decisions about a client's care.
Okay, so after a week of really hands-on practice, the focus totally shifts in week 13. Now it's time to hit the books, to dive into the research, and really understand the science that makes all these therapeutic techniques tick.
Think about it. Our trainee has just learned the how, how to track progress. Now they've got to tackle the why. Why might these techniques actually work? What does the evidence really say? This is where the training moves out of the clinic and straight into the library.
And their guide for this week's journey is this book, and the work of its author, Dr. Andrew Newberg. Now, this guy is a leading neuroradiologist who's done some of the most famous studies on what happens in the brain when people are meditating or praying. He's the one who calls his field neurotheology.
So what exactly is our student learning about here? I mean, what is this field that's trying to build a bridge between two worlds that, let's be honest, a lot of people see as completely separate?
At first glance, the definition seems pretty simple, right? Neurotheology is the field that connects brain science with religion and theology. But, as our trainee is about to find out, the ambition of this field goes way, way deeper than that.
The scale of what Newberg is trying to do is just immense. He's not just hoping for a nice little chat between science and religion. No, he's aiming for a mega-theology, a grand theory that uses brain science to tackle the biggest questions out there about consciousness, reality, and what spiritual experience even is.
But, as our student knows, a huge part of any good academic training isn't just to soak up ideas, it's to question them. Science really only moves forward because of debate and critical review.
Newberg's work is definitely influential, but it's not without its critics. So our trainee has to learn how to weigh all the arguments carefully. And it really starts with this one central question. Is the brain the whole story?
So here's the core tension, the big debate. On one hand, you have Newberg arguing that since we experience all of reality through our brain, then understanding the brain has to be the key to everything. He literally says we are trapped with our brain peering out into the world. But then, critics like Nathaniel F. Barrett push back pretty hard, arguing that this view is just way too narrow. He calls it a highly truncated view because it tends to crowd out the huge influence of things like our culture, our environment, and our social worlds.
In the critique, it's even more specific. Other scholars argue that Newberg's whole approach is built on some unexamined assumptions. They say his brain-first model kind of ignores other really popular theories of the mind, like the idea that our thoughts are embodied in our physical selves or situated in the world all around us. This is the complex intellectual territory our trainee has to learn to navigate.
Okay, so we've seen the practical skills from week 12 and the big academic debate from week 13. All of this leads us to the most important question of all. What does any of this actually mean for therapy?
Seriously, why does this high-level stuff matter for our trainee? Their ultimate goal is to sit in a room with another human being and help them heal. So how does all this research connect back to that person sitting in the chair?
Well, the research our student is digging into has direct connections to clinical work. For instance, brain imaging studies can actually show how meditation changes brain regions that regulate emotion in people with PTSD. You can see it reduces activity in the amygdala, that's the brain's fear center, and it strengthens the prefrontal cortex. This kind of evidence, which shows these practices can tangibly reduce symptoms of anxiety and depression, is exactly how the theory ends up informing the therapy.
And this brings our trainee's journey right back to where we started. The biggest lesson from these 2 intense weeks is all about nuance. See, real expertise isn't just about knowing how to use a machine or just knowing the academic literature. It's about weaving the two together, being guided by the evidence, for sure, but also staying really humble about what we still don't know.
And all of that leaves us with one final, pretty powerful question to think about. As these fields, neuroscience and mental health, continue to merge and become more integrated, we're really being forced to rethink the role of a person's spirit, their deepest beliefs and values, in the modern process of healing. And that's a question that trainees just like the one we've been following will be answering for years and years to come.